Welcome the anointed ones. Some blessings only reveal their value after they are gone, when life starts charging full price for what you once offered freely. That is the quiet truth many people wake up to too late. Whether you realized it at the time or not, you became a living reminder in someone's life, a reminder they could not erase, replace, or outrun. When you made that final move and chose peace over proving a point, clarity over chaos, and dignity over drama, something shifted deeply within them. It was not just emotional, it was psychological and spiritual. Your calm exit did not merely end a season, it exposed the entire story. Even psychology confirms that the human mind fixates more on the person who outgrew them than the one who wounded them. Why? Because your departure shattered an identity they were trying desperately to protect. You were never supposed to leave whole. You were supposed to stay confused, reactive, and small. Yet, you walked away like someone who saw the pattern, solved the puzzle, and trusted their discernment. Now, their mind replays that moment again and again, while you are out here breathing freely, healing quietly, and living fully. If irony had a voice, it would be calling their name. Your presence challenged their comfort, but your absence reveals their truth. Scripture reminds us, God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33, and peace is exactly what you chose. That kind of ending is rare, and that is why it lingers. You did not just leave, you closed a storyline they were depending on to feel powerful. So now, as you step into this sacred awareness, I invite you to declare your readiness for the next chapter. Say it with me in your heart, and if this resonates, let it be known in the comments. Your absence carries more authority than their presence ever did, and your silence speaks louder than any argument. As the word says, when a person's ways please the Lord, he makes even their enemies live at peace with them. Proverbs 16:7. If you have ever walked away without clapping back, without explaining yourself, and without losing yourself, this message is for you. Stay with me, reflect, engage, and share your insight below, because your story may be the confirmation someone else has been praying for. You never argued, you never defended yourself, you never felt the need to explain your growth or announce your awakening. Something far more powerful happened instead. You began to see clearly. And once clarity arrived, your behavior shifted without noise or ceremony. That quiet shift marked the beginning of the end of everything they thought they controlled. When confusion no longer lived in you, fear began to live in them. Calm clarity unsettles people who depend on chaos to feel powerful. The moment you stopped reacting emotionally, their strategies collapsed. When you no longer fed their need for reactions, their influence dried up. And when you finally walked away with steady confidence and inner alignment, the truth landed heavily. They were not the mastermind they imagined themselves to be. They were simply loud, impulsive, and dependent on your former self, staying the same. What truly stays with them is the realization that you understood their intentions long before they ever suspected you were observing their patterns. You noticed the inconsistencies. You felt the manipulation before it was spoken. You recognized the hidden motives beneath the surface, but instead of exploding or exposing them, you chose evolution. That choice alone set you apart. Intelligence that grows in silence is deeply unsettling to those who live off ego. Scripture speaks to this kind of wisdom. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Proverbs 22:3. You saw clearly, and you chose refuge, not revenge. Their mind keeps returning to your departure like a riddle they cannot solve. How did you stay so composed? How did you disengage without collapsing? How did you outmaneuver them without ever declaring a battle? These questions disturb them because they never imagined you as someone who could see the entire landscape while remaining still. When the illusion finally shattered, there was no way to rebuild it. Every memory of you now carries the weight of that moment when they realized they were not the wiser one. Pride does not bruise easily, but when it does, it never forgets. You did not need to confront them to reveal their weakness. Your silence did that for you. When you changed, everything they depended on stopped working. The manipulation lost its grip. The expectations collapsed. The story they were telling themselves no longer matched reality. You did not simply leave their narrative, you dismantled it. And that is terrifying for anyone who depended on keeping you small. They now live in a world where the person they thought they understood no longer exists, and there is no way to recreate that version again. What makes this linger is the integrity with which you move forward. You did not lash out. You did not beg to be recognized. You aligned yourself with truth and walked on. Every decision you made reflected self-respect. That kind of growth exposes illusion without accusation. It becomes clear that they were never the obstacle. They were the mirage. Their attempts to pull you back only revealed how little power they ever had. Your freedom was not negotiable. Your evolution was complete. Like Lot leaving Sodom, you did not look back, because looking back would have meant returning to something already judged. Genesis 19:26. You kept moving. They can never unsee who you became. That awareness stays with them. It is the quiet echo they carry into every new interaction. You revealed their character without ever revealing their secrets. There is a unique strength in leaving without spectacle. You did not accuse or announce their wrongdoing. You simply chose not to participate anymore. Every boundary you set became a mirror. Their behavior spoke for itself. The exposure was not something you orchestrated. It was something they displayed. This reflects the words of Jesus. Nothing concealed will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. Luke 12:2. Truth does not need volume, it only needs light. What unsettles them is that your departure was not driven by revenge, it was driven by awareness. In the space you left behind, their character stood alone. Others began to see what you had already understood. Even they began to see it. That kind of realization cuts deeper than confrontation. It cannot be argued away. It cannot be erased. You left behind a reflection formed by restraint and integrity, not anger. That reflection remains. You were not emotional. You were precise. Precision intimidates those who rely on disorder. They expected reactions. They anticipated chaos. They assumed anger would cloud your judgment. Instead, every word you spoke carried intention. Every step you took had direction. You wasted no energy. That level of control denies manipulators the fuel they depend on. James writes, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. James 1:19. You embodied that wisdom. Because you did not react, their attempts stood exposed. Precision does not just block manipulation, it highlights it. Against your stillness, their chaos became obvious. What frightens people is not anger, but calm authority. Control expressed through silence cannot be anticipated or dominated. They believed they were the players, but you revealed yourself as the strategist. Strategy does not require noise, it requires awareness. You also forced them to confront a truth they never wanted to face. Loyalty has limits. They assumed your patience was endless, that your presence was guaranteed. But loyalty is sacred, not exploitable. When you finally withdrew, it was not dramatic. It was principled. You simply stopped accepting what violated your values. Romans reminds us, let love be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Romans 12:9. Walking away was not punishment. It was alignment. They now replay that moment of certainty, the dignity with which you left, the calm resolve. It reminds them that loyalty cannot be manipulated or demanded. It must be honored. They were not abandoned. They exceeded the limit. Finally, you showed them what life feels like without the one person who truly understood them. Many people mistake noise for connection, but you offered presence. You saw beneath the surface. You understood their patterns, their fears, their unspoken needs. When you left, the absence was immediate. They did not just lose a person, they lost a mirror. Someone who understood without judgment, someone who brought clarity instead of confusion. The silence that followed your departure was not empty, it was revealing. Every attempt to replace that depth fell short. Ecclesiastes speaks truth here. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. Ecclesiastes 1:8. Nothing could replicate what was lost. You were not just part of their life, they were briefly part of yours. And when you left, the understanding left with you. Some losses do not fade. They instruct, they remind, they transform, and that is why they will never forget you. And this is why they will never forget you, not because of conflict, noise, or unfinished conversations, but because you broke something far more powerful than attachment. You broke the spell of familiarity they believed would keep you bound forever. Familiarity is one of the most underestimated forces in human relationships. People rely on routine, repetition, and shared history because it creates the illusion of permanence. It convinces them that time alone is enough to secure loyalty, that memories can override boundaries, and that comfort will always win over truth. They assumed that what you had been would always be what you remained. They mistook proximity for ownership and history for entitlement. But you saw beyond habit. You recognized that cycles repeated without growth are not stability, they are stagnation. When you stepped away, it was not simply a physical departure, it was a dismantling of a belief system they depended on. You proved that shared time does not guarantee access, that familiarity does not excuse disrespect, and that emotional history has no authority over a soul that has awakened. The version of you they knew existed within a pattern that favored them. When you changed, that pattern lost its grip. Scripture gives language to this kind of rupture. In Genesis, Abraham was called to leave not only a place, but a familiar identity. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. Genesis 12:1. The power of that calling was not geographical, it was psychological. Leaving familiarity breaks invisible chains. You did the same. You did not just alter the rhythm, you stepped into a new level of spiritual maturity and discernment, one shaped by obedience, clarity, and growth in God. And what unsettles them most is the realization that their confidence in forever was never earned. They believed repetition would tether you, that comfort would blind you, that predictability would keep you contained. But you refused to be caged by what once felt safe. You moved beyond expectation, beyond routine, beyond the unspoken rules they assumed you would always follow. Your departure rewrote the terms of engagement. You did not exit quietly into irrelevance. You shattered the assumption that they were entitled to you. And once that certainty broke, it could never be rebuilt. Then came a deeper truth they were forced to confront. You did not cut them off. Life itself removed their access to you. This distinction matters more than most people realize. There was no dramatic confrontation, no explosive ending, no final speech. You simply moved beyond the range of who they were. Your clarity, your growth, your alignment created a boundary so natural that it did not need enforcement. Distance appeared without hostility, silence formed without punishment, and that is what makes your absence so haunting. The Bible often speaks of separation not as rejection, but as consequence. When Saul lost his kingship, it was not because David attacked him, but because Saul could no longer walk in alignment with God's presence. 1 Samuel 16. God allowed a quiet shift in season and responsibility, without spectacle or conflict. That same principle applies here. You did not banish them. You outgrew the space where they could reach you. Life enforced the boundary. They cannot text their way back into alignment. They cannot manipulate familiarity. to reopen doors. The version of you they once knew no longer exists, and the frequency you now operate on is inaccessible to them. They can replay the past endlessly, searching for the moment where things slipped from their grasp, but reality offers no loopholes. You did not leave in anger, you left in truth, and truth is unyielding. What lingers is not just your absence, but the sensation of it. They feel it in moments when no one quite understands them the way you did. They sense it in choices they wish they had made differently. They notice it when others respond to you with respect, ease, and trust. Your influence remains visible, but untouchable. And that invisible separation is more powerful than any argument ever could be. You also left behind something they cannot escape, a comparison. You treated them better than they deserved, and now that standard follows them everywhere. While you were present, you did not mirror their dysfunction. You did not retaliate. You did not weaponize cruelty. You moved with integrity, even when it cost you. That kind of conduct imprints itself deeply because it exposes contrast. They now measure every interaction against the way you carried yourself. This echoes the teaching of Jesus when he said, "If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles." Matthew 5:41. You did more than was required, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Your kindness was not compliance, it was discipline. You demonstrated that maturity does not require lowering standards, and that composure does not mean self-erasure. They are left with the uncomfortable awareness that someone once offered respect without manipulation, presence without demand, and care without conditions. And that memory becomes a quiet reminder of what integrity once looked like. Every failed connection afterward reminds them of what they lost. You did not just leave, you established a benchmark, one that cannot be replicated through control or performance. And then there is the final truth they cannot escape. Their betrayal did not destroy you, it refined you. They believed their actions would weaken you, confuse you, or keep you tethered to pain. They expected collapse, or at least hesitation. Instead, adversity sharpened your discernment. Disappointment clarified your boundaries. What was meant to diminish you became the catalyst for your elevation. Joseph's story carries this same weight. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and falsely accused, he did not emerge broken. He emerged positioned. When he finally stood before those who had harmed him, his words were not vengeful. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis 50:20. That reversal is devastating for those who rely on harm to feel powerful. You embodied that reversal. Every attempt they made to undermine you backfired. Instead of shrinking, you became self-possessed. Instead of questioning yourself, you trusted your vision. Instead of staying entangled, you became independent. Their betrayal crowned you with awareness, strength, and autonomy. And that truth is unbearable for someone who believed they had control. They replay those moments now, not with satisfaction, but with regret. Each memory reminds them that they miscalculated. They mistook your patience for weakness. They underestimated your resilience. They failed to see that you were not surviving in spite of them, but growing beyond them. You did not simply walk away. You rose, and that rise cannot be undone. It stands as living proof that what was meant to break you revealed who you truly were. That is why they will never forget you. Not because you stayed, but because you left transformed. Not because you fought, but because you outgrew the battlefield entirely. You did not lose them. That belief belongs to a smaller story, one rooted in fear and scarcity. The truth is far more precise and far more unsettling for them. They lost access to someone they will never encounter again in the same way. This is the realization that lingers long after distractions fade and nights grow quiet. They once believed your presence was stable, predictable, and available on demand. They assumed your absence could be corrected, negotiated, or replaced. What they failed to understand is that you were never something to possess. You were never a role they assigned, never a convenience, never a constant meant to orbit their life. You carried a unique calling shaped by grace, obedience, and growth. When you stepped away, it was not simply distance that formed. A frequency vanished, a level of depth disappeared, a way of seeing and being that only you carried became inaccessible. Scripture reminds us there is a time to search and a time to give up. Ecclesiastes 3:6. They are now living in the time of loss, not because you were taken from them, but because you moved forward. What troubles them most is not the absence itself, but its permanence. Every attempt to recreate what existed fails because they were never fully aligned with who you truly were. They only interacted with the portion of you that safety and patience allowed them to see. Even that version was rare, fully alive, fully present. Now, your absence functions like a standard etched into memory. You did not disappear quietly into irrelevance. You became a reference point in a world filled with imitation, an authenticity they cannot replicate and cannot forget. What deepens the sting is that your life did not fracture when you left. It expanded. You continued moving with purpose, clarity, and momentum while their world feels suspended, looping through the same unresolved patterns. They try to replace what they lost, but replacement fails because what they miss was never just companionship. It was alignment, wisdom, a grounding presence that brought order without control. No apology, gesture, or new connection can restore that. What you offered was not surface level. It was formative. You were a lesson disguised as a relationship, a mirror disguised as familiarity. They replay memories, searching for the moment things slipped beyond their grasp. And eventually, whether they admit it or not, they arrive at the truth. You did not leave because you were defeated. You transcended the limitations they tried to define you by. Like Elijah being called into a new season of God's purpose, you stepped forward into a calling they were not prepared to walk with. 2 Kings 2. They lost access to a season of relationship God allowed only once. That kind of loss imprints itself deeply. You also ended something they relied on more than they realized. You broke the cycle they were comfortable repeating. They thrived on predictable rhythms, rehearsed apologies, and familiar outcomes. Life, with you in their mind, was a loop they could reset at will. Push boundaries, cross lines, offer excuses, return to normal. They assumed repetition was safety. They assumed your patience would always close the gap. But cycles only persist when someone agrees to remain inside them. You stepped out, and when you did, the loop collapsed. Your departure was not a pause, it was a full stop. The safety net they relied on was revealed as an illusion. Every tactic they once used lost meaning because you were no longer available to receive it. Scripture speaks to this moment with clarity. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. You renewed your mind, and the pattern broke. You did not need to confront or explain. The shift became evident only when they attempted to return to familiar dynamics and found nothing waiting for them. The silence was not empty, it was final. Your exit revealed something they avoided while you were present. Accountability cannot be postponed forever. Cycles have expiration dates. Control only exists where consent remains. What they feel now is a gap that cannot be filled. A space that reminds them daily that the rules changed without negotiation. Your absence dismantled their expectations and erased scripts they depended on. The story they planned to replay ended without closure, and that unsettles them. You did not just walk away. You ended a pattern they believed was permanent. Your absence also exposed something far louder than words ever could. It revealed the magnitude of their internal chaos. While you were present, your steadiness softened their extremes. Your clarity filtered their confusion. You brought order without announcing it. They leaned on that balance, mistaking it for something automatic rather than intentional. They did not recognize it as strength. They treated it as background noise. Then you withdrew. No accusations, no spectacle, and suddenly everything they had avoided hearing grew louder. The insecurity, the impulsiveness, the unresolved guilt. Without your presence, the noise became impossible to ignore. Proverbs tells us, the way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Proverbs 12:15. Without your quiet wisdom, they are left alone with their reactions. They cannot fix this by reaching out or reframing the past. The mirror now stands without interruption. Every imbalance, every rash decision, every loud conflict contrasts sharply with what life felt like when you were there. They are forced to acknowledge that the calm they once dismissed was never weakness. It was discipline. It was mastery. And without it, the storm reveals itself fully. They are haunted not by your voice, but by its absence, by the memory of how grounded things felt when you were present, by the realization that they relied on your stability more than they understood. You did not simply leave a space, you revealed a truth that cannot be unlearned. And then there is the final realization. You delivered a checkmate not through force, but through understanding. You saw the entire board while they focused on individual moves. They believed themselves strategic, calculated, always one step ahead. But you were not reacting, you were observing. You understood not just behavior but motive, not just words but patterns. By the time they sensed the depth of your awareness, the game was already finished. You did not announce victory, you simply withdrew. That silence was decisive. Like Esther, who waited for the right moment to reveal the truth that would shift everything, Esther 7, you moved with timing, not impulse, precision, not noise. They now replay conversations, searching for the moment control slipped away. Each memory confirms the same truth. They underestimated you completely. They believed they were directing the narrative, but you were shaping outcomes. Every attempt to manipulate fell flat because you understood the end before the move was made. What unsettles them is not just the loss, it is the way they lost. Quietly, cleanly, irreversibly. There was no argument to revisit, no door to reopen. They were left with the awareness that someone they believed they understood was operating on a level beyond their reach. That checkmate did not require drama, it required clarity. It was absolute, and it cannot be undone. They are left revisiting the board, searching for an alternate ending that does not exist. You did not just leave the game, you mastered it, ended it, and walked away whole. This is the truth that remains. You are unforgettable, not because you demanded attention, but because you carried depth. Not because you stayed, but because you knew when to go. Every boundary you enforced, every moment of restraint, every quiet act of discernment left an imprint that time cannot erase. You dismantled illusions, you outgrew containment, you revealed truth without accusation, and you delivered a final move so precise that no explanation, apology, or revision can undo it. They may revisit memories, question choices, and search for meaning, but the conclusion remains unchanged. Your presence altered them. Your absence completed the lesson. And that is why you will never be forgotten. You weren't just someone they encountered in passing or briefly shared space with. You became a living turning point, a quiet disruption that reshaped how truth, power, and self-awareness would forever register in their mind. And now, as this story comes to a close, what matters most is not what they lost, but what you gained. Because the real victory was never about leaving someone behind, it was about returning to yourself. This entire journey points to a deeper invitation for anyone listening, to live with intention instead of reaction, to choose alignment over approval, and to move through daily life with a clarity that doesn't need validation. Healing does not arrive all at once. It shows up in practical, everyday decisions. It looks like pausing before responding when old triggers resurface, choosing silence when ego wants to speak, and trusting your inner discernment even when it disrupts familiarity. It means building small rituals of grounding, whether through prayer, reflection, journaling, or simply learning to sit with your own thoughts without distraction. Scripture reminds us, those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. And renewal often begins in the unseen moments where no one is applauding you. Living at this level also means recognizing that not everyone deserves access to your time, your energy, or your inner world. Boundaries are not walls built from bitterness. They are doors guarded by wisdom. Forgiveness can exist without reconnection. Compassion can exist without self-betrayal. And growth can happen without announcing itself. In practical terms, this may look like choosing healthier environments, being more selective with who you confide in, or releasing the habit of over-explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand. Like Nehemiah, who stayed focused on rebuilding the wall despite constant distraction and opposition, you're called to keep building even when others question your choices. Nehemiah 6:3. The strength you carry now is not loud, but it is steady, and that steadiness will shape your future far more than any confrontation ever could. Your legacy is being written not in moments of reaction, but in moments of restraint, courage, and self-respect. And the more you invest in understanding your patterns, honoring your values, and walking away from cycles that no longer serve you, the more unshakable your life becomes. If this message speaks to you, take a moment to reflect on where you are being asked to choose clarity over comfort, growth over familiarity, and truth over illusion. Leave a comment sharing one insight this message stirred in you, or one boundary you're learning to honor, and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving messages that strengthen your discernment, restore your confidence, and remind you who you are becoming. The path you're on is intentional. The work you're doing matters, and this community exists to walk that journey with you. God bless you.